Welcome back to our diesel-powered 1989 Chevy S10 project. Today, we're going to continue moving forward with the indestructible 1.6-liter Volkswagen IDI diesel engine installation, and unfortunately, sometimes going forward means you got to take a step backwards first. What I mean by that is, the motor mounts we made in the previous video were slightly off, and we need to reposition the engine a tiny bit. It's a minor change, but it's a change I feel is necessary in order to get the best placement of the engine. If you're just tuning into our channel for the first time, I recommend you also watch the previous two videos where we discuss how the Volkswagen engine was connected to the Chevy transmission using a reasonably priced kit made for various types of Volkswagen diesel engines. And we also discuss why the exact placement of the engine is so important for everything to work. Anyway, I'm Jimbo, the content creator of this channel, and I'll be your narrator, engineer, and fabricator in today's video. With that said, let's get started with today's episode. So after last week's video was uploaded, well, we made a few changes to the motor mounts. You see, the right side motor mount had to be modified slightly with these spacers in order to shift the engine over to the left a little bit. Although the spacers work fine, they're not the preferred solution, so I need to come up with a better system. Let's take this motor mount off the engine and fabricate something a little bit different. So basically I need to shim the engine over to the left a 1/4 inch, and I could pretty much put the shims anywhere. So I'm going to put these shims underneath this bracket. So instead of reusing the spacers that I was using, I'm going to go ahead and make a shim out of a 1/4 inch thick steel plate. This shim will move the engine a bit over to the left, which is what I need, and it's also going to reinforce the motor mount a tiny bit. So all I need to do is cut this shim out of the steel plate and we can reassemble the motor mount. This engineering change may seem unnecessary, and technically it is, but the previous solution required 4 1/4 inch thick spacers. These spacers kinda looked like a half-ass fix. The new 1/4 inch thick steel plate shim will look better, and it's going to provide the same results. So to me it makes sense. Okay, fast forward a bit and the shim's been drilled and painted. I reckon it's ready to be installed. Of course, once again, I'm just fitting the parts and nothing's going to be torqued down. You know, if I didn't say that, I'll get a ton of comments from helpful people pointing out that I shouldn't use a 1/4 inch drive ratchet to install motor mounts. Now, I always appreciate folks looking out for me, but I'd rather read comments about real issues that you see. Meh, at some point down the road, these bolts will get tightened properly. So the stock Chevy motor mounts that I'm using do have rubber isolators. The point I was trying to make in a previous video is these rubber isolators may be too stiff for the diesel engine. Anyway, some folks thought I was installing solid motor mounts, which is definitely not a good idea. So no worries, I'm using rubber motor mounts and they'll probably be fine for this application. Alright, the weight of the engine is now on the motor mount. It's hard to say what the actual number is, but this engine does weigh a lot less than the Iron Duke, and overall this truck is going to be a lot lighter with this engine swap. Once the truck is back on the road, we'll get it weighed and find out what the difference is. But my best guess is it's going to be about 200 pounds lighter. Okay, let's talk about the motor mount bracket for the left side of the engine. So in the previous video, I built this bracket out of 1/4 inch thick steel, and for reference, the bracket fits the engine like this. Now since we're shifting the engine over to the left a little bit, this bracket needs to be modified. However, there's a problem. You see, the 1/4 inch thick steel that makes up the base of this bracket is warped a tiny bit, and the warpage likely happened when I welded the outriggers to the base of this bracket. Well, we can't have any warpage because this bracket attaches to the aluminum water pump housing, and tightening this slightly warped bracket down would put a lot of stress on the water pump housing, and that's not good. So, I fabricated another motor mount bracket with the relocated bolt holes to shift the engine over to the left. Well, once again, when I welded the outriggers to the base of the bracket, I warped the steel. It's unfortunate, but this second motor mount bracket's going into the scrap bin. Now on my third attempt, I switched over to 3/16 thick steel and I managed to build a bracket that didn't warp, which is awesome. So now we have a motor mount bracket that shifts the engine over to the left a little bit and all is good. The 3/16 thick steel was definitely the way to go, and it can flex a little bit if it's not 100% perfect. Now, going with this thinner steel allowed me to try something I wasn't sure was going to work with the thicker brackets, and that's to use the stock Volkswagen alternator mount. This heavy-duty cast iron alternator bracket fits over the custom-made motor mount bracket like this. This alternator bracket may actually help reinforce the motor mount bracket, so this is a double win. Now, in order to get this alternator bracket to fit, well, I had to cut a clearance groove on the bottom side to clear the outriggers on the motor mount bracket. Actually, this is nothing too exciting at first glance, but since the bracket's made of cast iron, some care is necessary when modifying it. You see, cast iron can be a bit tricky to work with. Anyway, before I cut the material out of the bracket, I went ahead and drilled a hole here. This hole is actually a stress-relieving radius, and it prevents stress risers from forming in the cast iron. Now, I did my best to minimize any stress risers from forming by not having any sharp edges in this modification. But since this part's been modified, there's always a chance it may crack at some point. I'm fine with that. The point I wanted to make is, something like this simple modification to a bracket can have dire effects, and working with cast iron requires a bit of knowledge and some special techniques in order to prevent problems from happening down the road. Now, this bracket was originally meant to hold the alternator, the air conditioner compressor, and the power steering pump. And all we're asking it to do now is just to hold the alternator in place. So there's a good chance the bracket is way overbuilt and our modification won't have any effect on it. So I'm not really too worried. Fast forward a few minutes and I have the left side motor mount installed, and at this point the engine's in its final position. So for YouTube, I normally paint the custom parts gray so they're easier to see on camera. However, as you can see this time around, the parts are painted black. So in my opinion, the black paint helps make this one-of-a-kind part look like it's supposed to be there. Sort of a factory appearance. Anyway, since the alternator bracket is on top of the motor mount bracket, I also had to add a few washers to move the upper part of the alternator bracket an equal amount to keep everything even. Eventually, I'm going to get rid of the washers and fabricate a spacer that's made from the same material I made the motor mount bracket from. Now, I know how all this stuff is supposed to go together, and the washers are fine. However, I want to make this assembly a little bit more idiot-proof, and replacing the washers with a proper spacer is a step in the right direction. Fast forward a little bit, and I finally dropped in the injector pump. This mechanical fuel injector pump is absolutely necessary for the diesel engine to run, and temporarily installing it confirms that there are no new issues as far as interference items on the truck, so that's good. You know, attaching a 1985 Volkswagen Golf diesel engine to the Chevy transmission and then getting the drivetrain to bolt into a Chevy S10 chassis is the most difficult part of this project. However, we do have a handful of minor issues still to tackle. One of the problems we encountered when using this intake manifold on the diesel engine is the manifold actually comes in contact with the heater box. Obviously, this is not ideal, and we need to find a way to provide enough clearance so the intake manifold doesn't bump up against the heater box when the engine's running. And while we're at it, let's also provide enough clearance so we can do maintenance on the engine. You know, the motor mount on the opposite side of the engine is in such a tight spot, there's actually the possibility that we may have to remove the motor mount to service the thermostat. And it would be nice to have enough clearance to lift or tilt the engine a small amount. Now, for some folks, this problem could be solved with a BFH, and it would only take a few seconds to do the modification. That's fine for some people. However, I want this modification to look nice, so I'm going to cut and weld the heater box so I have a perfect custom fit. And boom, the heater box got a light coat of paint. That way, I can use a Sharpie to draw the cut lines. You know, spray painting stuff a lighter color is something that I do to help see where the modifications are going to be. Some people use tape, and some people don't use anything. I like to use the light color paint so I can mark it up with a Sharpie. So these blue lines represent approximately where we're going to need to cut. We'll probably go a little bit bigger, but before we do anything, let's make sure there's nothing under the heater box that will cause problems. So let's take a quick peek behind the heater box. Well, it looks like we may get close to this flange, but I think we're going to be okay. Yep, that's going to be fine. Alright, let's have another look and make sure we know how far down the modification should go. Well, I really don't need to go down too far, and that should be in the neighborhood. And like I said before, I'll probably go a little bit more. But for now, I know approximately how much I need to cut in order to get the space we need. So this is a chunk of 18 gauge steel, and we're going to be using this to make the filler piece in the heater box. As you can see, I've already drawn the cut and fold lines, and right here where the X is, that part's going to be cut out. Once we're done making the cut, then we'll have to fold the steel and make a quick weld. So in my opinion, it's easier to build this part first, then we can cut up the heater box to make this part fit. Alright, let's get started. Well, that was easy. Now we can put this thing on the vise and fold the metal to the shape we want. Whoops, I went way too far. I guess I wasn't thinking. I'll go ahead and bend this thing back to where I want it to be. And that's about right. Okay, let's fold the other side. Now it's starting to look like something we can fill in the hole that we're going to be cutting in the heater box. So this corner here needs to be welded to make this thing a solid chunk of steel. So let's do that next. Alright, at this point we can cut up the heater box so the newly fabricated part will fit. So after a lot of trimming, I got this new part to fit the heater box, and it's not a perfect fit, but once I start welding, then I can bend the part for a better fit. Right now, it definitely fits good enough so I can start welding. So let's do that. Okay, after some grinding and sanding, this is the finished heater box. For the most part, it came out pretty good. This looks a lot better than bashing the heater box with a hammer. Although it did take a few hours to get to this point, and a hammer would have been a lot faster, that's for sure. Let's see how it fits. The good news is it fits the firewall no problem, so we didn't warp the metal, and that was something I was worried about. You see, I'm not really a welder, but I do play one on YouTube. Now, with the manifold hard up against the cylinder head, it looks like we have plenty of clearance. Not too shabby. It was definitely a lot of work, but it was worth it in my opinion. So, we're going to paint this heater box with pro-grade truck bedliner paint. This stuff will give a mild texture to the heater box and make the engine bay look a lot nicer. I gave the heater box a light coat to start off with, and in about an hour I'll finish off with another light coat. This will give the surface a really nice texture. Now, I've used this stuff in the past and I really like the way it holds up. Plus, it has a nice texture, although I don't really think this stuff is durable enough to be used for a truck bed liner. Fast forward 24 hours and the paint is completely dried, and now I can install the heater box. The bed liner paint looks really nice, and it may actually help absorb some of the harsh sounds in the engine bay. Next, I can install the manifold, and one bolt should be more than enough for today. So this looks pretty good, and I'm glad I took the time to make this modification. You know, this was actually good practice for the oil pan modifications that I need to make in order to provide clearance for the crossmember. The good news is the oil pan is made from a lot thicker steel and should be so much easier to weld. So, in theory, it won't be long before the engine's running and the truck's back on the road. On a diesel engine like this one, well, there isn't much in the way of wiring, or in other words, it's super simple, and all we need is power to the fuel shutoff solenoid, a lead from the ignition switch to the starter relay, plus a way to turn on the glow plugs for a few moments. I reckon we also need a wire for the alternator, and that's pretty much it. Of course, right now, this truck doesn't look drivable, even if the engine was running. We still need to install the windshield and the doors, plus we need some sort of seat to sit on. Well, the good news is I finally had a chance to squirt some paint on the doors. Now, in case you didn't know, this car is getting a Rust-Oleum paint job, and so far we've had outstanding results. Check out some of the previous videos if you hadn't seen them already. Anyway, the doors are difficult to do because both sides have to be primered and then painted, and it takes a few days between each step. Right now, these doors only have a thin layer of paint on the outside, and they need one more coat of paint before they can be installed. So the doors will be going back on the truck real soon, and I'm really looking forward to taking this rig out on its first drive. But before we can do that, we have to finish the engine swap and we have to finish the paint work. So please be patient. This is a lot of work for one person. Anyway, let's do a project update on one of our oddball cars. Well, sadly, a few weeks ago, our 670cc Predator-powered 1969 Renault left our shop for the final time, and it was shipped off to its new owner. I'm very happy to report that the car is in good hands now, and it's received a bit of a makeover. I really like the color the new owner chose, and it gives the car a whole new look. The little Renault is making the car show rounds, and from what I'm told, it attracts a lot of attention. It looks weird, that's for sure, but folks apparently love the fact that it's powered by a Harbor Freight V-twin engine. I'm so happy the car found a new home and it's doing well. We'll definitely miss the Renault, but it was time to move on. I know a lot of you folks really love that wacky little car, and you can rest easy now. It's in a good place and it's getting the love that it deserves. I reckon I'm wasting time and I really should be finishing up the diesel S10 pickup, so we'll see you next time. Until then.